So this month I've had an amazing time reading all of these books, and I can't wait to review them with you today. So let's get started. The first book that I want to review with you today is Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot. It is such a cute book. I can't even stand it. It is so good. So this bookmark is kind of deceiving because I'm further along. I've been listening to the audiobook while I'm doing work or while I'm doing chores around the house. And so I feel like I'm probably about 50% done with this book, but it is so good. The audiobook is spectacular, especially if you're reading it at the same time in a physical book. So I highly encourage you to read this and maybe listen to the audiobook too. Here's the audiobook right here in case you want to listen to it. The voice actor on this audiobook is phenomenal. He's from the television series with the same title that you should probably check out. I want to read the book first before I do that, but so far I just can't wait to match the faces with the names of the characters in the book. So I'm really excited to do that. This is loosely based off of James Herriot's real life in England when he was a veterinarian, and so that part is really intriguing to me. You may enjoy it also if you're interested in animals or animal science because it goes into great detail in how he helps these animals. There's some pretty heavy topics in here too, so there is animal death in here. So if that's a sensitive topic to you, I would probably skip this book. But it's handled really, really well, and it's handled in a way that you know that James knows what he's doing when he's making that call. So I'm really enjoying this book, and I'm excited to see how it ends. It's also a really perfect book to read during the spring because you can see through this beautiful cover here. There's fields of England in the background. There's sheep and some cows and a dog. It beautifully captures the English countryside. And it's making me really want to go to England. I've never been before. I do have ancestors that are from England and from Scotland. So I love reading a good book that has that as a backdrop so it can give a better insight into what my ancestors may have experienced in England. So if you're interested, pick it up or watch the television series. I'm excited to do both. So that is James Herriot's All Creatures Great and Small. It's such a sweet little book. So tell me in the comments if you've read it or any other kind of recommendations that I may enjoy since I've read this book. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, the next book I'm going to kind of offset as a nonfiction. Now something a little bit about me, I don't know if you are like this, but sometimes I need to read a good nonfiction with a fiction so that I don't mix up all the fiction together. I read multiple books at a time, and so I think that helps me to be able to not get them mixed up. So that's the method to my madness. I'm interested to see how you read books. Do you read a lot of books all at one time, or do you read them cover to cover? I tend to get bored really easily, and my focus isn't the best, and so I find that mixing up nonfiction and fiction really helps me to go quicker when I'm reading. Also, I prefer listening to the audiobook and having a physical copy and underlining it. That being said, the next book that I'm recommending is Daring Greatly. Look at all these tabs. I have so many tabs. Oh my goodness. And I am probably about 50% done on this book as well. I thought since I had seen a lot of her content that this might be repeating some of the things in her TED Talks. But it is not. It's all fresh new content that I wasn't aware of. I'm very excited to share with you in future videos what she has to say. But let me just give you one quote while I'm here. This is one of my favorite quotes from her about creativity. To put our art, our writing, our photography, our ideas out into the world with no assurance of acceptance or appreciation, that's also vulnerability. To let ourselves sink into the joyful moments of our lives, even though we know that they are fleeting, even though the world tells us not to be too happy, lest we invite disaster, that is an intense form of vulnerability. I'm going to be sharing with you on social media more of her quotes. If you have a favorite quote of hers, let me know in the comments. So that is Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. I highly recommend this book and also her TED Talk, so look her up on YouTube. She's fantastic. Okay, the next book that I'm reading is Writing Picture Books by Anne Whitford Paul. It has great illustrations on this. Now, when I first picked this up, I have to admit, I was kind of disappointed because I was kind of looking for a way in which to illustrate picture books, but I didn't read the title, Writing for Picture Books. But this is a great book either way because I'm learning how to do that as well. And so this has some great tips on how to write really short stories for children. But I also think this is really valuable in terms of telling your family history in a short story form with different points of view and how the industry usually handles those in terms of kids. But I think it's great for if you're trying to write a family history story that's short, that gets people's attention and wanting to hear more about your family history. And so I'm excited to try and do that. I have some ideas that I would like to share with you on this channel with regards to writing in short story form, and this will be a great resource to do so. But what I love about this is it also has little quizzes at the end that you can retain the information that you're going through, but also it has different tips and tricks on how to best go about doing a short story. And so I just am really enjoying this. I haven't got through a lot of it because it is really dense in its examples. I would like to go to the library at some point and pick out the picture books that it's suggested in here because it is truly an art form to write a really short story that keeps somebody's attention, most importantly, children's attention. But I think it could be useful for family history because I feel like this space, people have a short attention span because they are intimidated by family history or they don't like it, or maybe they just don't have time to do it. And so I want to be able to provide examples that are quick and easy in which to be able to share those stories here in our community. This will be a really great resource. So check this out if you're really interested in learning about the short story form. And again, this is called Writing Picture Books by Anne Whitford Paul. Has great examples of picture books that you can also purchase or get from the library to show examples of how to write in a short story form. So pick this up if you're interested, and let me know also if there's any other great books about writing in short story form, and I would love to pick those up as well. Okay, so the next book I actually finished, yay! So I actually finished The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly. I'm going to spoil it, but this is my favorite book out of all of the 8 books. I'll tell you why. It is such a great story about a boy who tries to reconnect with his family through books. Literally, he goes into a world of fairy tales. And these are Grimm's fairy tales, so they are grim. They are not like Disney fairy tales. They are Grimm fairy tales, but it is so fun. Some of them I didn't know before, and I was wanting to reread this book immediately so that I can remember all of the great stories. But mostly what this is about is just connection. That's the thread throughout the book. I've really enjoyed this. It also showed me as a society what we learn about family in terms of cautionary tales. This is a book about cautionary tales, about what not to do, what to do. And I feel like that's a really underlining theme, and that can be said for family. So I'm interested to hear if you had a cautionary tale growing up in your family that really led you to either empower you or disempower you. In this book, I feel like the cautionary tale, he was able to get through that, and I won't spoil it, but he definitely was empowered through the process of trying to find his family. 10 out of 10. This is so well written. I also listened to the audiobook on this one. It made the reading experience even that more enriching, because the narrator was fantastic. I'll put the audiobook here, so if you want to check that out, feel free to. So this is a great book, The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly, so check it out. This is the next book, The Cartographers. I'm sorry you have to look at this cover every time we talk about it. It's a bookshelf. Who doesn't love a good bookshelf? This book is a reread for me, and it has been going so well. I really, really enjoy this reread better than the first time. Like I mentioned in a previous video, I really didn't enjoy the first reading experience because I think I was just overwhelmed by all the books that I was reading at the time. But now that I have a chance to really reread this, it's been such a joy. I'm not very far though. I'm only 25% in the book. And I think it's because I do have a lot of other books to read, but also I'm listening to it on the audiobook as well. And I want to listen to it at a normal speed. Usually I read at like 2.0 or even more, depending on how great the book is. But sometimes I just want to immerse myself. I want to savor a book. I don't know if you do that, but I love to savor a book and just to read it at a slow pace and really immerse myself into this. And it is so good. So what this is about is there is a girl that is the main character, and she works at a map store where they recreate books. And then her father, he actually works at a museum with really rare maps. And so they have this connection with them that are maps. But, and this isn't a spoiler, this happens like on page 10 or so, but the dad unexpectedly passes away, and the only clue for the daughter to be able to find what happened to her dad is through map. And so it's really, really good. But I love a good story that involves a map. There's many maps in here. There's many references of maps that talk about real maps that people have used and the history behind them. And it's just a really good book so far. So it's a great reread. I'm excited to go through it again. Although I know how it ends, it's almost like I want to see how the author gets from point A and point B. And that will be a really exciting thing to look at. So this is The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. So check out this book. I also listened to the audiobook. You can look at it here. It's a great narrator as well. I've heard her before, and it makes the reading experience just wonderful. So I highly recommend this book. This book, If We're Being Honest, by Kat Shook, is probably the most controversial book that I've read in this pile. I don't know what to make of this book because it has a lot of things that are really interesting, and it also has some really heartfelt moments in it. But I have to be honest, I was a little disconnected with some of the characters and I didn't feel like they were very realistic. So I'm having a hard time reviewing this one. I'm almost done. I only have a couple of chapters, but I'm this close to not finishing this book, and I'll tell you why. Because although it has really rich and really kind of funny moments and characters in the book, and the themes are really needed and I feel like people need to read about them, there's some things that took me out of the story, and I'll have to explain one of them in just a minute. But the first one is the romantic character. There's kind of a romance that goes throughout the book. It's like, oh, are they going to get together? Are they not going to get together? And now I don't know if they're going to get together. I haven't read the ending, so I won't spoil it. But just that relationship alone, I'm really struggling to get into that because it just doesn't feel realistic to me. And so I'm really struggling. Although the writing is really good, and I feel like the characters are really good, it's just sometimes when they interact, it just doesn't feel very realistic to me. That's all. But I love the cover, and so I want to continue and press on. But the second thing that I really haven't enjoyed in this book is I'm listening to the audiobook as well, and the narrator is really, really good. It's just, I don't think it's a good fit for the type of book that it is. She almost has a too serious voice for this type of book, which is kind of lighthearted at times, even though it has heavy topics, but it just doesn't land for me. And so I think that may be why, but see what you think. So that's the second reason why I'm not really enjoying this book. The third reason is probably really silly to anyone, but it has 2 fart jokes in it. And it's like, really? And they're in the weirdest place. And I was just very confused, and it took me out of the book. It's not like I'm a prude or anything. I just didn't think that it was necessary. So if you want to read it just for that, be my guest. But I just felt like it took me out of the book. So tell me what you think. But I love a good cover. I probably won't get rid of this book even if I don't enjoy it that much. Try it out for yourself, because it just may be the mood that I'm in right now currently, especially reading them against all these other 8 books. That could be it too. I don't really want to hate on this book because I feel like it has some good things about it. So you're just going to have to decide for yourself on this one. But the cover's fantastic and I love the characters. So that part I'm really enjoying. So this book is the most shocking book that I read, and I'll tell you why. This is called This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub. Loved this book. And the reason why I'm shocked by it is because on the surface, this is a time travel book about with a father-daughter relationship, and the father is dying in a hospital and she kind of wants to go back in time to relive their experiences together. And so that is the whole premise of the book, and I won't spoil what happens, but it is a really good heartfelt read. But it does have some heavy topics in it, and it kind of has a melancholy feel to it. And so sometimes I like that, and this time I was in the mood for it. But the most shocking thing that I didn't know about this until the very end, and I'm tempted not to tell you about it, but the author, Emma Straub, is a daughter of the author Peter Straub, who co-authored books with Stephen King. And I didn't make that connection. So here's a book that he co-authored. This is actually a first edition that I got, but I was shocked. And I love when true stories merge with fiction, and this so happened to be that. This was loosely based on her and her father's relationship. If you read the acknowledgments in the back, it will tell you in more detail about that. I don't want to spoil it, but that was such a pleasant little surprise. I love when that happens with books. So I highly recommend this. I really enjoyed it even before I knew that she was related to Peter Straub. It was a really well-written book. It really talked about themes about death and about relationships and how to cope with those things, and how even though it's a time travel book and she tries to go back in time, that their relationship is what's really what life is all about. So I loved this book. I couldn't recommend this more. So check this out today. I'm curious to see what you think if you've read the book. So we have one more book to go over, and that is called The Book of Boundaries, and it is right here. I had to return it to the library. I tried to recheck it out, and it is a long waiting list. I may have to buy this book because I felt like it was really, really good, and I want to be able to highlight my own notes in my own book. And so that is what I'll probably do because it had a lot of really good, useful information. The biggest takeaway I got from this book was how to communicate boundaries, and I just thought it was really good. It tackles the fine balance between setting a really firm boundary and a really soft boundary, and I just can't wait to read it again. One of the things that I learned from it is having a small boundary and then increasing that up to a much larger boundary, and how to go about the nuance of the different stages in between. It gives you practice scenarios to work on. I have found this book to be really empowering for my own life so that I can communicate the boundaries that I need for myself, and it's just empowered me, and I highly recommend reading this book. It was really accessible, it was really easy to read, it was really easy to relate to. I think sometimes books miss the mark by making it really technical or having all of these definitions, and this book was just simple, accessible, easy to try, and you can try it out in different stages. It doesn't have to be like this linear way in which to do things. So I really, really appreciated that approach to it. I highly recommend The Book of Boundaries. So check it out sometime and tell me what you think. So these are all the books that I read, and one more that I had to return to the library, but I thoroughly enjoyed reading all of these. I'm curious to hear in the comments if you've read any of these, what you think of them, and then if you haven't, which ones would you choose to read next if you could. So please leave a comment on what you think. Thank you so much for joining me on this March Madness book review. I'm so excited to share with you some new things that I have planned in April that I haven't done before on YouTube, and I'm curious to hear your feedback. So I've been working on those all March. I'm just thrilled and excited to share with you those soon. This is a friendly reminder to like, subscribe, and get notifications so that you can see new content on my YouTube channel. Thanks everyone, bye.